Cut the music. We're cutting the music. Cut the music. Cut the music.
We're not rocking with it tonight.
We don't get the luxury to run the music tonight. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into another Celtics Talk Weekly Postgame Show. I am your host, Rob Haytayan. Joined with me are my two great co-hosts, Justin Lowe and Seamus Zarlingo, guys. And tonight, the Boston Celtics had a little duel for the 1 seed in Cleveland. However, their match fell just shy as the Celtics led in that fourth quarter, and Cleveland, led by Donovan Mitchell, stormed back and defeated the Boston Celtics 115-111. The season series, guys, on this matchup is now 1 game apiece. Cleveland, coming into this game, were obviously losers of 2 of their last 3. This game was very important to them. They showed up. They were able to play. Boston tonight was without Derek White, foot injury, and Jaylen Brown, illness, non-COVID related. Both of those guys were out of the lineup. We saw different players come into the lineup and insert themselves. We're going to talk about them shortly, guys. But before we do that, let's take a look at the lead tracker tonight. Guys,
Oh my goodness.
this is something before the show. We were like, we need to talk about it. We need to talk about the lead tracker. A lot of red, a lot of green. And then just right there at the end, right there, you can see it right there. The Celtics lose. Celtics lose it.
That is like the ultimate game
Brutal.
of tug of war when you're getting destroyed at first, and then you finally take the reins. And then that team across the rope just gets that little bit of second wind, and that second wind is at the worst time. And on top of that, not only was that entire second wind about that last 5-6 minutes of that fourth quarter, the Cleveland Cavaliers' second win, it was Donovan Mitchell's win.
Yeah.
That was all Donovan Mitchell down the stretch. So I have to give credit to Donovan Mitchell. Now, listen, I told you this before we hit record, Rob. I expected this out of Donovan Mitchell. I did expect a little bit more consistency of his game tonight. He showed up in the final 6 minutes. He was really nowhere to be found throughout the night, but showed up when it mattered most. He shot 5 of 23 the other night and got absolutely blown out by the Atlanta Hawks. So I expected this bounce back game from Donovan Mitchell, but man, Seamus, we had it. No Jaylen Brown, no Derek White, and we had it. Up 14 early in that fourth quarter, and we lose by 4.
Well, we have to look at this in a little bit of a rational sense here because there was no Jaylen Brown, there was no Derek White. We were missing 2 starters, but Cavs fans will turn around and go, well, we didn't have Dean Wade. We didn't have Max Strus, both matchups against the Celtics. And I understand, okay, maybe those guys aren't on the same level as Jaylen Brown and Derek White, but of course they're missing 2 important players as well. The Cavaliers are, that is. Where do we even start with this one? Because early on, it really seemed like this could be a game in which the Celtics were just dominated in. I thought the Celtics were actually attacking well early, creating good shots, but they were just allowing Cleveland to penetrate the paint too often to the point where Cleveland, they created a double-digit lead early in that game, and it looked like, oh, on the road here, first night of a back-to-back, missing 2 players, the Celtics. Cleveland, they're out for revenge from what happened last time, especially Darius Garland had a much better game tonight than he did at the Garden a couple of weeks ago against the Celtics. But in that third quarter, the Celtics could not have played any better in that fourth quarter, or not fourth quarter, I should say, really not the fourth quarter. The third quarter, they couldn't have played any better because the Boston Celtics, they weren't allowing Cleveland to penetrate the paint. Cleveland couldn't get anything going offensively. Meanwhile, on the other end of the floor, the Celtics just kept attacking the mismatches, specifically with Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum had a huge night, as you see on top of the screen here, 33 points on the night. And it really looked like, hey, the Celtics, they finally turned it around. They're about to run away with this game. But we all know in these type of matchups, when you have 2 of the top teams in the league, 2 contenders in the Eastern Conference, 12-point lead really is nothing in today's NBA. It really is nothing because you think the Cavs broadcast, of course, they were the ones on NBA TV tonight. They're saying, oh, look, it's 6-point game. Watch out. And I was saying, well, 6-point game now from a 12-point game. That's really only 2 buckets. That's 2 threes. You know, it's not that far off from that margin. So the Celtics didn't quite run away with this one. Let the Cavs inch their way back into the game. And Donovan Mitchell, you already mentioned it, Justin. Got to give him his flowers tonight because in the third quarter, it really looked like, oh, Cavaliers are not playing through Mitchell. They can't get anything going. He was kind of standing at the top of the key on most possessions. Celtics not allowing him to get the ball. But in that fourth quarter, he went and found the ball, and he hit some big 3-point shots down the stretch. I believe he had 9, 12 straight points at one point for the Cavs, and just
He wasn't missing.
He was not missing in the fourth quarter, and those shots were not open either. They were tough shots. They were contested threes. And Donovan Mitchell, we've seen this happen against the Celtics many times in the past. Donovan Mitchell, we think about game 2 last year in the playoffs, really torched the Celtics, made the Celtics play another game in that series against the Cavaliers, despite the Celtics really overpowering the Cavs in that semifinal series last year. But Donovan Mitchell, he came to play, and that's why he's one of the top players in the NBA. Of course, down the stretch, couldn't quite match what Donovan Mitchell had, of course, on the floor. And the Celtics, just the lead tracker, if we look at it, that one's brutal. That one is just absolutely brutal when you see that little dot there at the end where there's the big mountain. And it's just that little dot. The same thing happened against the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Atlanta Hawks a couple weeks ago. And the Celtics, this is really how they lose games. We're never blown out. The Celtics are never down 10 ever. It's just really at the last moment, we can't hang on. That's what happened tonight.
Are you able to throw that lead tracker back up on the screen for just a minute? I want to point this stretch out to you. Now, that first quarter, obviously, a lot of red for Cleveland Cavaliers. But if you notice, in the second quarter, that first quarter of the quarter, you see that dip down above 10 points. You get, maybe 12, 13, 14 points. That was a stretch in which Jason Tatum was on the bench. And Rob, I don't know what direction you're about to take this show, but I do want to mention that, again, I understand tonight, shorthanded, no Jaylen Brown, no Derek White. Usually one of those two, if not both guys, are in there when Jason Tatum sits in the first half of that second quarter. But the Celtics really struggled tonight when Jason Tatum was on the bench, and that has been a continuous issue we've seen here. Yes, Celtics have won 16 of their first 20 games, but it's been happening a lot of times now where we see Jason Tatum hit the bench and the Celtics kind of waver. And tonight you saw that big time. And Seamus, you mentioned it earlier in the show where, hey, Celtics came out, they were getting great looks. They just weren't falling. This looked like a game that the Celtics could have been wrapped up very, very quickly. And when I saw that Cleveland go on that run and take a double-digit lead in that second quarter, that's when I kind of thought to myself, man, like, we can't get anything going without Jason Tatum on the court. Jason Tatum is not going to play a 48-minute game, even though he's capable of doing that on a first night of a back-to-back. And I thought we would get blown out of the water there. I am a little bit concerned about how the Celtics have not been able to generate really anything without JT on the court.
I think that's been the general problem. By the way, just saying that out loud right now. It'd be great to have Lonnie Walker off the bench.
You're right. But like, Seamus, as much as I agree with that, it's tough for me because I'm not sure that would it would, but like this happens. Yeah.
Rob froze.
Uh-oh. I was like, is it my stream or is it somebody? I was like, is it Rob's or? I don't know.
No, that's right. That was. I just accidentally pressed deconnect my Wi-Fi, so I'm back. Sorry about that, everybody. No, but like that. I think that's like in tonight, you kind of expected it, and that's something I texted you guys. I was like, all right, let's see how these guys handle the non-Tatum minutes, because when they're full strength, Brown, White, Holiday, all those guys, right, they struggle, and it's been a struggle. And we know how good Jason Tatum is, and we know the impacts that he has. It's very apparent, right, guys?
Absolutely.
But I'm a little confused, right? I understand it. Jason Tatum takes this team from pretty damn good to really, really damn good, right? But we're not seeing that pretty damn good version of the Celtics, are we, with him on the bench?
No, and I don't necessarily know what it is, and I was a little bit surprised during that stretch tonight. And I talked about this a couple minutes ago, where usually in that second quarter stretch, Jaylen Brown is in the game to start the second quarter, and if he's not, at least Derek White is to control that offense. Tonight it was Peyton Pritchard in, and I was a little bit surprised. Yes, Peyton Pritchard did end up getting going later on in the game in the second half, but I was a little bit weirded out how Peyton Pritchard was not really producing too much in that second quarter with Jason Tatum on the bench, because we mentioned this in that Chicago postgame show, where even in that game, if it wasn't in the ball, if the ball wasn't in the hands of Jason Tatum or Peyton Pritchard, there was not really much going on in the offense. So I didn't see that tonight, and I was a little bit shocked that the Cavaliers didn't extend their lead past 14 points tonight because of that.
Yeah.
I mean, this game, quite honestly, it really, with two starters out, I think it shows some of the lack of depth the Celtics do have on the roster. I mean, we do talk about the bench a lot, and we talk about guys like Peyton Pritchard. We talk about guys like Sam Hauser, Luke Cornett, Kata. They can come off the bench. Even Al Horford, of course, he comes in and he's been in and out of the starting lineup because of Porzingis this year. But Porzingis, he's back in the lineup now. He's now a bench player. Al Horford is. But the Celtics bench, when you look at the options that they had tonight, especially considering Brown and Derek White being out of the lineup, at one point, it really felt like 2020-21 again, where Peyton Pritchard is the only player we trust out on the floor. And he really wasn't shooting well. However, he was the one guy with the ball in his hands that we did trust to actually make a play and do something. However, that same shooting performance we saw in Chicago just wasn't quite there tonight. And especially in that second quarter, it just felt like we were really in a bind of, do we have enough guys out on the floor? And I know I just mentioned Lonnie Walker. This is where I'm going to call out the Celtics right now, the ownership, just a little bit here,
Brad
because
Stevens?
well, I'm not necessarily Brad Stevens, because it's not always the GM. It's not always the guy who's calling the shots. It's really the owner. The GMs in the NBA, they have to be communicative with the owners, of course, because if you're going to add money to the luxury tax bill and put us over the second apron and all this good nonsense, you're going to have to consult the owner, because he's the one writing out the checks. You're going to have to consult Wick, Steve Pagliuca, geez. But anyway, you have to consult those guys to actually make those moves. And Lonnie Walker would have added, what, 10, 11 million more dollars to the luxury tax bill. And I look at that and go, I know Lonnie Walker shouldn't be a massive, massive shift for the Celtics team. Like, okay, we have Lonnie Walker. We don't have Lonnie Walker. It shouldn't be this massive difference the Celtics look at later in the season and go, oh, that's why we lost this playoff series, or oh, this is why we lost this particular game. It shouldn't be that big of a difference for the Celtics, but the Celtics cheaped out with Lonnie Walker. They could have added that money, and I know they really messed up by trading Delano Banton last year for Jaden Springer, and having Jaden Springer's a guaranteed money on the contract on the books this year with his contract. It's the eighth highest paid number on the books right now. Jaden Springer's is, and he's not the eighth best Celtics player. He's just not. When you have that type of discrepancy, he played 5 seconds tonight at the end of the game. He almost came up with a big play. I want to give Jaden Springer credit there. When you're on ice the entire night, you come in and almost make a big play. That's pretty impressive. And maybe some people have an outlook for him in the future that's a little bit more optimistic, considering he's still young. But Jaden Springer isn't exactly a productive player for the Celtics, yet he's the eighth highest paid player. We tried to trade him before the season to actually fit Lonnie Walker into the books on a minimum contract, that is. And the Celtics couldn't make it happen. We end up cutting Lonnie Walker, which makes absolutely no sense from a transactional perspective of who is actually on the roster. From a contractual perspective, it actually makes sense, because, we're shifting around money. We want to be under a certain number. We don't want to add $11 million to the luxury tax. And for us to sit here and go, oh yeah, just add that money, that's a pretty large chunk of cash. $11 million they have to shell out for one bench player. But during these types of games, when we have two players injured, which quite honestly, it's never guaranteed. We saw last year in the playoffs, Porzingis missed the entirety of the playoff run outside of the little portion of the Heat series and the little portion of the Maverick series in the finals. We're not always guaranteed to have full health. And during those moments where the Celtics don't have full health, it's great to go into your depth and have options. The Celtics, don't get me wrong, they do have options off the bench. But when guys aren't healthy and you cheap out on a player in the I shouldn't say offseason, but the preseason, like Lonnie Walker, who was clearly producing for the team during the preseason, that it leaves a little bit of a discrepancy there on nights like this, where it doesn't feel like that needed to be the case. It really didn't. Yet we see tonight when Jason Tatum goes out of the game, when Jaylen Brown's not playing, when Derek White's not playing, the team struggled to find players in which they felt comfortable with playing. And that's just the case right now.
And I do think that is heavily revolved on the new system and it's not new, but the Celtics right now, guys, they're running their offense through Tatum. Everything is through Tatum. They generate their first looks off of getting that mismatch, getting Jason Tatum in that action. Now, tonight we saw it work. When he was on the floor, we saw it work. And it when he steps off, it doesn't. And my only concern, right, with the whole Lonnie Walker thing was in not paying him, right? I guess on the flip side of it, it's kind of like, if we were to acquire Lonnie Walker, I feel like he would have just ended up in the corner and he would have ended up being a catch and shoot. And I talked about this last post-game show where I feel like we're not utilizing Holiday and White. We're just turning everyone into a 3-and-D guy, which isn't a bad thing, but it's kind of like,
I want to take the conversation off of a player that we could have but we don't have. It shifted to a guy that we do have now and made a huge impact in tonight's game.
Drew Patterson.
Yeah, it's
Drew Peterson.
Drew Peterson.
What a fumble on that one. But I mean, I want to get you guys know me. I've been handing out my flowers all week. Nimi, I handed out my flowers the other night to Nimi, the other night to Peyton Pritchard. Tonight, Drew Peterson, man. Like Drew Peterson coming in to this game had played 30 minutes all season, mainly garbage time, no disrespect. Comes in tonight, plays the entire second quarter, plays 9 minutes in the third quarter, and played clutch minutes here tonight in the game. And there was a point where I'm sitting there and I'm saying, get Drew Peterson back in the game.
No way.
I swear, Rob, I swear. Listen, Drew Peterson, sharpshooter, known for his sharpshooting. I didn't know he had that defense in his name. I didn't know he had that. He was able to hold his own all night long. There were a couple times there were some backdoor cuts, and even Brian Scalabrine said it in the broadcast where there was a play where LeVert slipped through the back door to beat the shot clock, and even Scal said Drew had that 98% covered. 98%. Right. He turned his head for 1 second and boom, LeVert went backdoor. Man, talk about staying where you always talk about the stay ready group. Drew Peterson, two-way deal, not really getting his minutes here in this Celtics rotation. You probably thought that, if they're going to go anywhere deep in the bench, it's going to be Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday. It's going to be Jordan Walsh. It wasn't. It was Drew Peterson, and he came in tonight. I don't know his minutes. I'm going to quickly off the box score. I believe he played upwards of 20 minutes. He had 25 minutes tonight. And he was huge, got some rebounds, had 5 points in the first half. I think he finished with 8 or 9. So credit to Drew Peterson, man. Not Drew Patterson, Drew Peterson. Gotta give my flowers where credits are due, man. I was ecstatic. There was a point, Rob. There was. This is not my LeBron James moment. There was a moment where I said, I want Drew Peterson back in this game. And what did Joe Mazzulla do? He put Drew Peterson in that game late in the fourth quarter.
That was a wild card. That was a wild card for sure.
There isn't it a bit surprising? Isn't it a bit surprising that out of all the players who play in Maine, right, who are in and out of the Maine Celtics rotation, Drew Peterson, J.D. Davison, Baylor Shireman, Jordan Walsh, that ends up being Drew Peterson. Drew Peterson's had a couple of nice performances up in Maine, but some of these other guys have lit it up as well up there, and yet Drew Peterson's the guy who gets the call up and ultimately the minutes tonight. And Justin, you said it. I mean, he was phenomenal in those minutes, and he stayed ready. That's what staying ready looks like. Straight up. I mean, if you're not playing the entire season, it's game 20 tonight. Game 20. He's not seeing minutes at all, and he comes into the game, and he looks ready. He's ready to take those shots. I even looked at him at the free throw line tonight. He looked there was a moment where he was communicating with Joe Mazzulla on the sideline, and in that moment, you couldn't tell that he was a player that hadn't played the entire season. He looked like a normal rotation player communicating of what we're going to do on this next play. It was right before halftime, I believe. And unfortunately, the communication was a little off because Donovan Mitchell streaked down the floor and Drew Holiday ended up fouling him right before halftime. And that gave the Cavs a halftime lead. But those kind of moments right there, that shows a lot for a player who sits on the bench on ice the entire season and then can come into a game and make a definitive impact. And I'll add this too. When we watched Drew Peterson in the preseason, he had a couple good moments later in the preseason, but I thought in those Abu Dhabi games, specifically the first couple of games there, the first 3 games of preseason, looked at Drew Peterson and went, he's a little stiff out here. Maybe not the most active player on defense on the offensive end, but he's considerably grown since that moment, and he did show late in the preseason because that's really the last time we saw him in bulk minutes outside of Maine. With that portion of the preseason, it's like, oh, he's kind of getting his legs under him now, and he came out tonight and made a definitive impact. And I even texted you guys this. Could he be potentially in the future? Now, this is thinking way down the line here. When a team overpays Sam Hauser for his services, because inevitably, after we're paying all these players, the Celtics, they're just paying an astronomical bill for every single starter right now, and it's going to come to an end one day where we have to they can't pay this guy like we saw with Grant Williams 2 years ago. Grant Williams, not exactly the guy we're going to pay here. Sam Hauser, I think a team's eventually going to give him a nice payday in the future for what he's done with the Celtics and how he's developed with the Celtics. And maybe when that day comes, Drew Peterson, you never know. Drew Peterson could be that next guy who comes up through Maine. He's a two-way player, of course, and establishes himself as a standard player. That's thinking way down the line here, but
it is. I mean, we might not see Peterson. We might not see Peterson ever again. Like, this is like when we were talking about is Walsh the next O'Shea Brissett, and now we haven't seen Walsh since we talked about that.
But that's a good that's good you bring up Walsh's name because you'd think Walsh would get the run, and Walsh has shown up from time to time this season. You've seen him at times get subbed in. He's got some first quarter burn, second, third. Like, he's played, but he hasn't given you anything offensively. Right. Yeah. And I think that's where it's like, and again, what have I been saying here? I'm going to be a broken record, guys. Fair warning for the foreseeable future. 3 and D. Yeah. Joe Mazzulla wants a guy that can space when Jason Tatum's operating and play efficient defense and run the other team off the 3-point line. What did Drew Peterson do tonight? Played good D, and he spotted corner, and it was a shooter for Jason Tatum to facilitate.
This was something that I didn't know. I was not familiar with Drew Peterson having such a stiff defense. Like, he keeps his hips locked in the defensive end. Like, he's just so engaged defensively, and he has such solid read. And then he comes down and then offensively, obviously we know him more of a sharp shooter. Comes in, didn't really shoot the rock too great tonight, but he did his job. He spaced out the floor. He stayed there in that corner, spaced on the wing, and I'd say he took maybe 5 threes and hit maybe 2 of them. He did his job. He spaced the floor for guys like Tatum and Porzingis to be able to facilitate, and then he took the open look. If he was passing up that open shot, we talk about it with Sam Hauser all the time. Oh, he's missing all these threes. Should we be concerned? No. When you're dealing with a sharp shooter, a really good shooter at that, you'd be more concerned if they're passing up those open looks rather than not taking those open looks. So just credit for Drew Peterson coming in tonight. Assistant coach, one of the Celtics assistant coaches they interviewed at halftime said, I don't even think Drew Peterson knew he was going to play tonight. So just credit for him. Like, remember, and I was telling my girlfriend this during the game. She's like, oh, do you think he's getting yelled at? Like, if he fouls or misses a shot? And I'm like, he's one of the greatest players in the entire planet. Like, only so many players make the NBA. Like, Drew Peterson, give these guys credit. He might not be getting minutes on this Celtics roster, but he's killing it down in Maine. And he's probably killing it in I said, I play basketball. I'm not in the NBA. He'd kill me, so credit for
if you never got hurt, though, you could have made it.
Staying ready. Yeah, that's true. My
story every time.
If people don't know, I got a G League tryout and my back went out like a week before. But man, why would you remind me that? Man, I could have been a millionaire. but just in all seriousness, flowers to Drew Peterson. Second night of a back-to-back. I know we'll get into the Miami game later on in the show, but I dare I say I'd love to see him play tomorrow. I don't know main schedule, but I mean, here's the thing with these two-way players and with these guys who don't get traditional minutes in the rotation. My thing is, can I consistently see you do that? And we kind of talk about that with Jordan Walsh. Walsh had a killer preseason. Can we see this come regular season, and can we see it consistently? So I want to see Drew Peterson tomorrow night locking up Jimmy Butler on the wing and draining threes on Tyler Hero down the other end. So great game tonight from Drew Peterson. And had we won this game, I'd be hyping this up like the Cavaliers were hyping up that Dean Wade game last year. This was our Drew Peterson game.
I think Drew Peterson, too, what's like between him and Walsh, really, I think he has a little bit more of an offensive bag than Jordan Walsh. I think he has a couple more handles in his game. I think he's a better finisher. He has that floater we saw in the preseason as well. That I think Jordan Walsh is a little bit janky when it comes down to the rim. When he's driving to the rim, it's like, all right, Jordan Walsh, maybe not the best of finishers out there, but what went wrong for Jordan Walsh this season, this is going to be a joke, is opening night. Opening night, he couldn't make the three that set the record. He was part of the cast who missed all those threes at the end of the game. Jordan Walsh, he's having a great preseason. Couldn't. After that, I was like, sit down, Jordan Walsh. You can't make one of these threes and break the record. But in all seriousness, though, between those two players, I expect to see Jordan Walsh, though, later in the season, maybe a little bit, because I think we can all say that Jordan Walsh in the preseason at one point in time was looking like, maybe a rotation player for the Celtics. Now we haven't seen him at all, but we all know he has defensive intangibles. He does have a silky smooth shot. However, I don't know if he has as much of an offensive bag as Drew Peterson, as we saw tonight. But on these main players, it's great that we're actually talking about these guys because, number one, they don't get enough conversation. And number two, this is the bread and butter for the Celtics now. Really looking at all the players coming off the bench. Peyton Pritchard, 26th overall pick. Sam Hauser, former two-way player. Nehemias Queta, he was a two-way player for the Sacramento Kings. We signed him. He was a two-way player for us. He was a two-way player for us. We signed him to a standard deal. Cornette, as you said, Justin, it's all these guys. We're able to develop them and bring them up and be actual rotation players that we're using on a nightly basis. And now we're looking at Drew Peterson. We haven't seen much of Jordan Walsh at all this season, but we know those two guys. We're looking at them going, maybe sometime in the future. J.D. Davison, too. He's lighting up. He's main Celtics all-time leading scorer. I haven't seen much of him at all because of all the guards. Yeah, all the guards off the bench. But J.D. Davison, he has some promise, too. So the Celtics, it's great to see these guys actually come in and produce at the level in which one day we might actually see them produce at.
I feel like we're in a summer league.
I was just about to say that. Justin has a big old smile on his face right now because we are sitting here talking about
my summer league alumni just ball out in regular season. It's just making me tear up.
No, you're right, Seamus. These players don't
Super Bowl here.
They don't get a lot of love or run time on
enough
CTW.
love by me, man. I don't know about you guys. They get enough love by me.
All right, let's pivot here though. Off of the end of the bench, guys, and let's pivot here to the head guy. Tonight's player spotlight, guys, the SeatGeek player of the game. Now, guys, I don't know if you've noticed, but it is officially December 1st, and that means Christmas and the holidays are officially here. Guys, there is no better gift I can think of right now than getting a loved one a ticket to go watch the best team in basketball play basketball at any arena across the United States, guys. And SeatGeek is the perfect outlet to allow you to do that. Guys, at checkout, use code Celtics Weekly for $20 off your first purchase on anything, live events, basketball games, anything, guys. Seriously, SeatGeek, shout out to SeatGeek for sponsoring this post-game show this year. The link is at the top of the description. Guys, let's talk about Jason Tatum, though. We talked about his impacts when he's not on the floor, but we haven't really talked about what he was doing when he's on the floor, right? Jason Tatum tonight, 33 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 stocks, shot 12 of 27 from the floor, 4 of 9 from behind the arc. Seamus, obviously here, Jason Tatum, he's been playing at an MVP level, and he was great up until that ending, but he really kept the Celtics afloat, and we've talked about how important and impactful he is when he's on the floor. What did you like from JT tonight?
Well, Jason Tatum, he was our main guy for the entirety of the game, and it really all centered on, is he in the game or is he not in the game? We talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the show. If Jason Tatum was in the game, it felt like the Celtics, they had a shot throughout the night. Yet when he came out, we were all sitting there puckering ourselves, going,
Right.
we have all the bench guys come in. Jason Tatum, he's not out there. And the other night we had a conversation about Drew Holiday and Derek White. They're not really the facilitators we've seen them be in the past for the Celtics. But I think to add on to that conversation that we had the other night is Jason Tatum is a part of that equation because he's been phenomenal as a facilitator and a playmaker this season. And the Celtics, they're running through him, primarily Jason Tatum, that is. And we're seeing he has a career high in assists this year. He's almost up to 6 assists per game, which is just insane to think about where he started in the NBA. He's this 3-and-D forward who's really playing alongside Kyrie Irving, Gordon Hayward. Well, Gordon Hayward was out most of his rookie year, but the second year, of course, Gordon Hayward and all those other guys who were on that great Celtics team that unfortunately didn't quite get past the hump there in the past in 2018-19 and 2017-18. But where Jason Tatum started to where he is now, he is the main ball handler for the Celtics, despite all the guards that reside within the Celtics rotation. And tonight, Jason Tatum was the guy who the Celtics wanted to play through. Of course, that's the case really every night, but specifically tonight against the Cavaliers guards, they were hunting the mismatches over and over and over again. They wanted Darius Garland on Jason Tatum, and they wanted Jason Tatum to go to the rim, shoot over Darius Garland, and create for others. And I thought Jason Tatum, he was the catalyst for the Celtics being aggressive and going downhill. I thought early on the Celtics, they weren't really making a lot of shots and they were missing a lot of easy shots at the rim and they were getting unlucky. But I thought Jason Tatum, when he was penetrating the paint, putting the pressure on this Cavs defense, he was allowing the Celtics to open up those opportunities from the perimeter and, of course, those opportunities around the bucket as well once he got to the bucket, if he was able to get there, of course. And Jason Tatum, he was just phenomenal when he was on the floor tonight. And unfortunately, down the stretch, couldn't quite get that bunny to go late in the fourth quarter, and that's really the one that we're going, oh my goodness. But for the rest of the game with Jason Tatum, 12 of 27, probably could be a little bit better with that mark. I know he's kind of settling at some points for the mid-range jumper, but overall he was very aggressive, and he led the way for the Celtics offense tonight.
A lot of ISO. A lot of ISO from Jason Tatum. I will say this. Well, first of all, you have 4 other guys on the court, so this kind of maybe contradicts it a little bit because no matter who's playing and who's in, who's out there, no matter what, there's always 4 other guys on the court. But tonight was a very ISO-heavy game from Jason Tatum, which I'm not the biggest fan of. But I will tell you, if we had a play of the game, it would have been in the first half. And I texted this to you guys. In the first half, Jason Tatum woke up and realized he's 6'9", 225 pounds. Saw Darius Garland was matched up on him. Instead of just dribbling 20 seconds of the shot clock away and then taking a step back contested 3 over Garland, he actually used his body, got down low in the paint and backed him down, and then did a post fade Dirk style and drilled it. So where is that every single night from Jason Tatum? Where is that? Specific play every single night. Whoever handles the clips after the game, and if this becomes a clip, put that play up because that is absolutely what I need to see from Jason Tatum every single night. I don't need to see him at the 3-point line anymore, man. I know he's hitting at a solid clip, but I don't need to see these ISO 3 step backs when the mismatches on Jason Tatum. That's more so what I'm saying. It's these contested step back ISOs on mismatches. But tonight you did have to see a big game from Jason Tatum tonight with no Jaylen Brown, no Derek White, and you did get that 33 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. As you said, Seamus, could have been a smidge more efficient, but what can you do? What can you do in a game like this? And tough couple of bounces, as you mentioned, Rob, at the end of the game.
Well, throughout the entire game, there was about 5 or 6 layups and again, something I've talked about is Jason Tatum's shot profile. Layups. Right? What percentage of Jason Tatum shots are coming from inside versus the mid level versus the 3-point level, right? Tonight, his shot profile was quite honestly exactly where I like it being 9 threes to 18 twos, right? That's really right around my math's right there, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just double checking. That's really right around what I want to see Tatum doing. And I think this was play style wise exactly what I want to see out of JT, right? I love those. I know this might be I love those mid ranges. I really do. I love when Tatum gets, especially when they're hitting like tonight. There's a couple plays, guys, where Tatum got downhill and he didn't get the layup in. And you know what that is? And I want to ask you guys this question. It was very apparent that Jason Tatum was not a fan of the officiating. And I think this has been a trend.
Never is.
Right. But this season, he's been a little bit better at it. And he's been more efficient at the rim. But do you guys see a correlation between Tatum's finishing percentage and what the refs are calling? Because when the refs are blowing the whistle and Tatum doesn't have to think about it, he's going up strong. But when they're not blowing the whistle, he gets frustrated. It kind of feels like he goes up flimsy. He's trying to get the call. It's in his head, and he's not really finishing hard to the rack.
Yeah, I think Tatum really, we've seen in the past a million times, the referees can really affect his game entirely. And I shouldn't say the referees really, because it's himself and what kind of calls he feels like he's getting or not getting. And it's really the way the game is being called, because on some nights we know, oh, the game, it's very chippy. Just, every call, every little nitpick call they're going to call. And other nights it's like, oh, they're not calling anything out there. So, of course, that can affect the game for Jason Tatum a little bit. But I think when it comes down to that, Jason Tatum, he can get in his own head. But he never really loves the officiating. I don't think there's ever a long stretch of the game where he really loves the officiating. I mean, he's always kind of looking at him going, he's doing one of these, right? And I think
doing one of these.
Do you think that's fair?
I'm trying to fit my, there we go, like like one of these, right? I'm trying to fit my shoulders in here in the screen. But really, Jason Tatum, I think he's been better at it this season, because at this point last year, people were questioning what's wrong with Jason Tatum. And we forget the last, 3 seasons before this one. This is really the first season of Jason Tatum's career where he's actually come out and looked like an MVP and went all gangbusters on the rest of the league, because most of the time, I should say the last 3 seasons before this one, Jason Tatum, he was complaining to the officials a lot. He wasn't getting the calls. He wasn't getting to the free throw line, wasn't getting downhill. He was turning the ball over a ton. And people were looking at him going, what's wrong with Jason Tatum? What's wrong with Jason Tatum? And now that's really not the case at all. And I think he's done a much better job this year of just playing his game and knowing what he needs to do. But I also think that's kind of within the Celtics offense too. They've gone more to him this season and let him be Jason Tatum. And I think this team too, what also needs to be said is they have more continuity in year 2 than in year 1. Because if you really think the shelf lives of NBA teams nowadays, which, this kind of does good or bad for the league, is rivalries used to be, they used to be half a decade long to a decade long. You had the same familiarity on each and every team. Yet now, most Celtics teams, or I should say most teams in the NBA, have a shelf life of about 1 to 2 years. It's kind of rare you see that 3-4 year team that looks really similar from 3 years ago or 4 years ago. Last year, we of course saw a completely different Celtics squad than the year before in 2022-23, because Marcus Smart, he's gone. Robert Williams, he's gone. Drew Holiday comes in, Kristaps Porzingis comes in, and that's really the beginning of that Celtics squad last year, that new iteration of the Celtics. Of course, we still have Tatum and Brown at the top, but the new iteration of the Celtics comes in, and then now in year 2, they've won a championship together, they played over 100 games together, and now you're kind of seeing more of a continuity with the entire squad. Now what we really need to accomplish, though, this particular season is having everybody out there at once. We haven't quite had that, mostly with Porzingis, because he missed the first 17 games, but now we're seeing Brown, White, they miss a game tonight, and we want to see more of that consistency going forward. But of course, the original question was about Jason Tatum. I think he's benefiting off of that entirely this year. The continuity, that is.
Let me ask you this. Do you think, maybe this is, a hearsay question. Do you think Jason Tatum gets a whistle that he deserves?
I will say
I think now he does, for sure.
I tend to agree.
I think, with how much he got, Jason Tatum complains to the officials a lot. And I think that goes against him. I think
I
think officials know that. I think when they have their little meetings or whatever, I don't think Tatum respects the officials the way that he thinks he might. I don't know how to put it exactly. First of all, I think Jason Tatum thinks the officials are out to get him. I think there are calls that certain superstars do get, and even certain just players in general get. And then you look at Tatum. Tatum will get. I mean, there was a play tonight where Tatum got clobbered by Darius Garland. There was a play. He got clobbered by Darius Garland. There wasn't even a play on the ball, and there was no call. So I do think that Tatum does get the calls that he deserves. There are moments though
just
where
never enough for stars, really.
That's fair. That's very fair.
There are moments where it's even if I agree with Jason Tatum, dude, just get back. Like they're not gonna go, oh yeah, I see you throwing your arms up. So oh yeah, you know what, guys? Like I'm gonna bring this play back. Like Tatum's throwing his arms up. I got the call wrong. Come back. Like they're just not gonna do that. The refs are not gonna do that. So it's just like you can complain, whatever. Wait till the whistle's blown. Get back on defense because that hurts you. That hurts you a lot. So yeah, I mean, just whatever. It's not gonna the official's not just gonna stop there without a coach's challenge. You go, you know what, Jason, you're right. You're right. Let me just take the ball back. Look, guys, put 5 more seconds on the clock. Reset the clock. We're gonna shoot a couple free throws. Tatum was right. Here we go. Like they're not doing that, JT.
I do think that I think that if he were there's like when he doesn't open his mouth to the officials, they call the game. They call the game.
Shut up, Dave.
No, but like seriously, like for example, that 3-point attempt, right, where Lopez, I believe, or Giannis, it was Giannis. He came down under his feet. That was a game where Tatum was looking for calls. He continuously was in the refs' ears.
He does that. Yeah.
So,
you can tell when he does that.
I think there's some plays where you're watching and Tatum clearly gets hit hard or pushed from behind. Another one off that rebound. There's an offensive rebound this year where he was going up for. He got shoved in the back and there was no call. And I think you guys are right where it's kind of like refs are going to see that and think in their head, oh, God, here he's been in my ear all game. I'm good. Like, this one I'm good. And doesn't make it right, but I think his whistle, I think he gets a fair whistle, right? I think there's some calls where he goes up and he baits them and he gets them to jump, gets the whistle. I also think there are some times because of his continuous, bantering towards the referees, I could put it. I do think there's some drawback from the refs to kind of make a statement and be like, listen, you're not going to be in our ear all night. I definitely think that's the thing with Jason Tatum. So, but I mean, overall, Tatum had a spectacular game tonight, and we need to talk about this next person. I have to pivot yet again because there's a comment about it, and it was something that we've talked about and has been talked about, and it was not the correct Drew of the night. There was somebody that overshadowed the Drew game. Drew Holiday, guys. Now, this is a guy that is 35 years old. We just
5-year deal.
Freshly extended his contract. He is coming off of an 82-game season, NBA Finals run that goes into June, a couple weeks off, and then an Olympic gold medalist run straight into training camp. Mind you, 35-year-old.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that this Drew Holiday that we are seeing is the Drew Holiday we are going to get, or will it get better?
I geez, dude.
We don't want to admit that Drew Holiday. We don't want to go, oh well, he's 35. Looks like he's cooked. Looks like he's cooked. Now, I wouldn't say he's cooked necessarily, but definitely looks more like a 35-year-old this year than he did last year.
You can tell. And you know what? I hate to say this, hate to call him out, Al. Like I feel as if tonight if there was a game that showed their age, it would be tonight. And you look at Drew, and when he gets around the rim, I almost kind of cringe now because this year he has been not good around the rim. He has not been good. He drove twice tonight on Evan Mobley, and there was no prayer. There was no prayer that he would even get it going towards the basket, and he still shot it. And I just man, like
2 of
I don't know.
9 tonight.
And this is a game we needed, Drew. This was a game, if we needed Drew Holiday to put the ball in the net, it was tonight. And I'm going to refuse to believe that Drew Holiday and Al Horford are both aging. I'm going to refuse it because tomorrow night they both can drop 40 points, and I'm going to sit here and tell them, oh, see, I told you, like, these guys are good. These guys are fine. This is nothing. This is a rough stretch. But I will say, and I was going to mention this earlier, if there was a game that showed the age of Al Horford and Drew Holiday, it was tonight. And I'm a little bit afraid because there's no progression anymore. This is like 2K. No progression on year 17, 18. It is only degression,
Right.
Yeah, and I think tonight's matchup, I agree with you, Justin, that it definitely showed the ages of Al Horford and Drew Holiday from the standpoint of the Cavs. They're a very quick team. They have young, quick forwards, young,
Very
quick
quick.
guards.
Yep.
And Al Horford and Drew Holiday, they're maybe not at the quickest stage of their careers right now. And we don't want to admit that, they're aging to a point where they're going to be liabilities for the Celtics because they still bring a lot of value to the Celtics out on the floor. I mean, Drew Holiday, he did have 5 assists tonight, which that's very good, but 2 of 9 from the floor, 2 of 9. He was 0 of 3 from 3. I mean, last season, the picture of Drew Holiday that I have, other than him just hounding other teams on the defensive end of the floor, hounding other guards, the East's best guard is, yes. Thank you, Rob. You literally did it before me. I was getting ready to do this. I'm like, right here, the 3 going down the court, wide open. Oh, Drew Holiday with the trailer. Oh, Drew Holiday in the corner hitting the big 3 down the stretch. And this season so far, that really hasn't happened. Maybe in 1 or 2 games. Maybe
Right.
1 or 2 games he's had a big shot. But in terms of consistently making threes, and especially around the bucket, I mean, he was 2 of 9 tonight. 0 of 3 from 3. So that means he's 2 of 6 from 2. 2 of 6, which most of his shots from 2, where are they coming from? They're layups. He's not really taking mid-range shots, and they're mostly layups and floaters. And if he's not hitting those attempts, it's like, this is a little rough. It's a little rough.
Well, do you think that is the reason why we've seen Peyton Pritchard so much down the stretch? We've seen Peyton Pritchard's minutes increase tremendously. I think he played 36 minutes tonight, which was the second most minutes tonight in the box score for a Boston Celtic behind Jason Tatum. Do you guys think that that's why we've seen so much Peyton Pritchard because of the regression of Drew Holiday? Or do you think it's because Peyton Pritchard's been hot? Do you think Mazzulla's seeing the same thing we're seeing?
Let me throw a stat.
Both.
Let me throw out a stat real quick, guys. Right? Last year, Drew Holiday shot a league's best 60% from that right corner. This year, it is down to 35%.
Yeah. Okay. Listen,
that's terrible.
Okay, that's not good. That's not good. Like that's almost a 30% decrease. But can I be honest with you? Can I be honest with you though? 60% is historic.
Yeah. I was going to bring that up. 35% isn't awful, but
let's get off our high horses here and act like 35% on a regular season, that's not terrible. That is not right. Okay, so let's stop making it sound like 60% was just like, this guy.
It's still the decrease. It's the decrease too. It really is that decrease.
Also, it is the decrease, but also
25%. So it's a third of it.
Correct, but how many games did he shoot 60%? And how many games are we into right now? Right.
That's true. So here's my thing with Drew. Drew,
I'm fighting for you, baby.
There's a couple factors with Drew, right? One, the contract, right? That contract you just gave him is hefty. It's a big boy.
Why would you give him?
Well, here's my thing, right? So one, the contract, right? Two, defensively, Drew Holiday is still a core piece to what Boston does, right? Yes, he's slowed down in his ability to guard the quick perimeter, guards, but still, from a help standpoint, from a matchup standpoint, Drew Holiday defensively, his value is still clear as day on Boston, right? That third one is his offensive production. Right now, Drew Holiday, right now, there's a correlation. He's tired, he's old, his legs are gone, his shot's not falling, right? It's a simple equation, right? It's when you are tired and your legs are tired, right? Your shot's not gonna be at the best peak performance. I think right now, what we need from Drew Holiday is for him to stay healthy and get to the All-Star break. And I know we're only December 1st, and it's crazy to say that, but I think we see a much different Jrue Holiday post All-Star break, because right now I think Jrue Holiday, right? Yes, the age, but let's not just 5 months ago, right? Yes, age, and that's a thing. Just 5 months ago, he was the key piece in the Eastern Conference Finals matchup to send us to the NBA Finals, right? Like Jrue Holiday in that Pacers series, guys, was arguably our best player on both ends of the ball. So this is a player where I just think you got to let it play out. I again, back to your Peyton Pritchard point, excuse me, just real quick. Sorry. That's a good thing, right? You have Pritchard you can lean on right now. Pritchard's hooping. Give Holiday time. His legs are going to come back. But right now, it's ugly. In that contract, it does not help.
It's so funny. And this isn't even a basketball point. This is in this kind of life, too. It's so funny how, and I said this before, we're sitting here talking about Jrue Holiday at 35 years old. Like this poor guy is about to go into a nursing home, and he's at the end stages of his life. No, he's 35 years old. Okay. Jrue Holiday can retire right now and have between 50 and 60 years, maybe even more than that, with all these athletes on how healthy they are and how well they keep their bodies in shape. This guy has incredible amounts of life left. So Jrue Holiday, you are not close to ending. Like, it's just so funny.
You're going so deep here.
I don't
my
think
goodness.
that was where we were going. I don't think that's the direction.
Well, it's like oh man, his body's slowing down. It's like 35 years old.
Right, but from an NBA standpoint.
I know
we're
that.
not talking about death, Justin.
That's the point. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Guys, like, let's calm down. He's still got a long life ahead of him.
That's the point I'm trying to make. Like, we're here. Right. Like, that's a weird thing about sports is like we're here talking about a 35-year-old like he's at the end of his like he's at the end of his life. But like in reality, like this dude's like 35 years old. We have people like who would kill to be 35 years old. Like, oh man, like this guy's a freak athlete, like 35 years old. And then we're talking about Jrue Holiday at 35 years old, like. Man, like he's really slowing down his body. He just really doesn't look good. Like he's just slowing down. So it's just funny how we talk about 35 and like compare like 35 in sports is like you're just done. You're toast. And 35 in life is like you're just getting started. So,
but not necessarily. LeBron won a chance. And I sorry, don't want to get too off topic here, but Drew's got time. LeBron won his last ring at 35.
Drew has time.
Yes, there is. I'm not out on the Jrue Holiday train by any means yet.
But I do, Rob, want to mention this because we kind of talked about this with the big man depth. And tonight, on a first night of a back-to-back, I was a little bit surprised to see both big men, Horford and Porzingis playing. Yeah. But that's not my point. My point is tonight we saw Luke Kornet instead of Nemajic Queta. Last week or 2 weeks ago, we saw a lot of Nemi, and we didn't see any Luke Kornet. Nemi got caught in a lot of switches, a lot of backdoor cuts. Nemi just had a treacherous game against Cleveland Cavaliers. Got exposed tremendously in that game. Luke Kornet didn't play like fantastically great, didn't play like fantastically horrible. But I did want to kind of just like point that out. Like it does seem as if Joe Mazzulla really, really took advantage tonight and put you saw it. You could definitely tell that it was evident. Nemi struggled tremendously against the Cavaliers. DN played a ton of minutes the other night. DNP tonight. Seamus, did you pick up on that? Because that was a conversation you and I had on a post-game show recently when talking about switching these two big guys.
Well, I'm going to make a point here that's kind of outside of this game, but it's still going to relate, is when people think there's no competitiveness in the NBA, the Celtics just prove them completely wrong right now, because if you are not playing up to par as an NBA player or well against certain matchups, like we saw Queta against the Cavaliers a couple of weeks ago, or like we've seen Jrue Holiday recently, we're seeing more Peyton Pritchard down the stretch more than Jrue Holiday. If you are not playing well, it doesn't matter what your name is or how many minutes you had before in prior games. You're going to be replaced with somebody the coach or whoever is making the decisions behind the scenes believes is going to give the team the best chance to win. That's just simply what's going to happen. And tonight, very heavy Horford and Porzingis game going up against Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, but not only going up against those two big guys, elite big guys to add on to that, but the quick guards that the Cavaliers have out on the floor. If you put out Kada, they're going to want to get that switch out on the perimeter, and boom, Darius Garland, boom, Donovan Mitchell. They're going to be going straight downhill at him, penetrating the paint, bringing the help over, and all of a sudden, boom, perimeter shots all over the floor, falling for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So tonight, not exactly a Kada matchup by any metric whatsoever, and the Celtics really needed to go to Horford and Porzingis more often. And Cornette, yeah, they brought him out there a little bit, but he only really played 8.5 minutes, and he was solid for those 8.5 minutes. But he kind of brings that same deficit to the Celtics lineup as Kada at times, although more experienced and more sound. Where if you're pulling him out to the perimeter, he's going to get blown by, and he's not exactly the best perimeter defender. But when you had Jared Allen out there, and when you didn't really quite have Evan Mobley out there, who's a little bit more perimeter oriented, can hit that mid range a little bit more, can hit those outside shots just a little bit better than Jared Allen, of course, a lot better, I should say. That's when they put in Cornette, and that's when Cornette got his minutes. But tonight, it really does look, it does, I don't want to say expose the Celtics big man depth, because the Celtics really have some of the best big man depth in the entire NBA. It's just when you get past Horford, Porzingis, and even I would say Tillman. I was a little surprised we didn't see Tillman out there tonight, if he was even active. I mean,
he was
I didn't
available.
see him.
He was DMP.
Right. I don't remember seeing him on the injury report, and I'm a little surprised we didn't see him a little bit more out there tonight, or really at all. He didn't play at all. But outside of those guys, you're looking at Cornette and Kada. It's like they're going to have a couple of mismatch problems against certain teams. We saw that against the Timberwolves, and then going into the Clippers game, and then going into the Bulls game. It's like, okay, when Vucevic wasn't out on the floor, that's when they brought in Kada. And tonight, we have the data from a couple weeks ago suggesting cannot quite play Kada against this matchup in heavy minutes, and we simply didn't go to him tonight. And again, I wanted to make a point at the beginning. It's taken off screen here. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, you're
All
still
right.
in this. I don't know why. I don't know why we can't.
All right, there we go.
That was weird.
This kind of goes in with the point of the NBA is still competitive, folks. But a lot of people want to say the NBA isn't competitive, but the point is, if you're not playing well or you're not matching up well, you're going to be replaced. And we've seen that with Kada. And of course, going into another conversation, we've seen that a little bit with Drew Holiday and Peyton Pritchard as well. So 2 points there on the big man depth and just competitiveness in the NBA that people believe is no longer around, which is false.
Rob, I know we're kind of running on time here, but I do want to mention this, and I wanted to mention this when we had the lead tracker up. I want to say this. I don't care who is on the court for the Boston Celtics, who is in, who is out tonight. There is no excuse for the Cleveland Cavaliers or any of the 29 other NBA teams that you play against. There is no excuse that you should see a 43-point fourth quarter.
Oh, no, yes. Thank you, Justin. We should have mentioned that off the bat.
That's exactly why I said I wanted to. I just forgot to mention this in the lead tracker. No excuse. Up 14 at one point, maybe 12. You definitely went into that fourth quarter leading by 12 points. There was no excuse as to why you give up a 43-point fourth quarter. That is a whole half's worth of points right there. For some teams on nights, 43 points. It's not like Cleveland came out and punched you in the mouth and they score 43 points off the bat. Maybe they caught you in a third quarter where your legs are running dry. Really, 43-point quarters in any quarter is no excuse, but especially in a fourth quarter at which you were up by double digits. No excuse, Seamus and Rob. No excuse whatsoever. And that to me is a big problem. That defense in that fourth quarter. I understand Donovan Mitchell got going late, but I mean, for sake, he was making everything. There were great coverages on Donovan Mitchell, and this dude was flamethrower down the stretch in that fourth quarter. But I really wanted to mention that because I'm watching the ticker go by, and that's what reminded me. Celtics outscore them 35-21 in that third quarter, and then get outscored 43-27 in that fourth quarter. That's an abomination. You should not ever let up 43 points, specifically in a closing quarter. That should never happen.
Yeah, and just two quick stats here. The Celtics scored 49 in the first half, 49 points. So the Cavaliers, they were 6 points away from matching the Celtics' first half total in one quarter, particularly the fourth quarter, which is closing time. But also, let's throw out this stat and just maybe poking fun at another team here. The Pelicans scored 28 points in
I
the
was
first
just gonna tell you. I was just gonna say they scored 56 points through 3 quarters. You're telling me that you let the Cleveland Cavaliers score 13 less points in 1 quarter than the Pelicans did in 3 quarters? That's an abomination. Thank you for saying that, because I was gonna interrupt you and say that.
Yes, the Pelicans rip the fans right
But
now.
they
Oh
suck.
my
They're
goodness.
playing. They had to sign players to just in order to play. Take it back to the COVID days when you'd have to sign like a guy off the street to a 10-day contract to play. Shout out your man, Al-Farouq Aminu. Shout out your man, Al-Farouq Aminu.
Never gave him a shot. Formalities.
Oh my gosh, dude! This dude's trying to make a point, and his mic is just muted. He is not having a good time with the Wi-Fi. Oh boy.
Oh no.
All right.
I'm here. So right, my mic was muted.
There we go.
Oh my God. Yes. So what I was trying to say, I was like, do they not hear me, or are they ignoring me? Or I was like, or what's happening? So yes, what I was trying to say, that makes a lot of sense now. Wow, that's fine. Okay.
I read your lips, though. It's just something along the line. Great point. 43 points can never happen. Great point, Justin. You're
yeah,
usually,
of course. No, but it's like, in all seriousness, you're very right. And maybe it's a sign of complacency tonight out of Boston, up double digits entering the fourth quarter against a team you've already beaten once this year, with a game against Miami and a flight home tonight on your mind. So I do think that, and under no circumstances should you ever allow 43 points to be scored on any quarter, right? Any quarter, let alone the fourth quarter. So Boston tonight, they dropped the ball, and there's no doubt about that. But I do think that has been something we've talked about and will continue to talk about. This defense, the Celtics are a middle of the road defensive team this year, and they got to figure it out. And quite frankly, guys, this is game 20. I don't know if we remember the whole entire 25 games in thing, but I've stayed true to that here to now the fourth year on the show. Is that God? That's crazy. Is that 25 games?
You're almost in the grave.
I have a lot of.
How does it feel? How does it feel, Rob? How does it feel?
You know what I'm saying? No, but like we're 5 games away from me to potentially come out and outwardly say Boston's a mediocre defensive team. They're a league average defensive unit, and I'm going to say what, guys. For a team that has the exact same roster, who is the league's best defensive team, maybe second. I know Dallas finished the year on top of the league net rating wise in those last 30 games. But we were, if not the best, one of the best defensive units in the NBA. In the same unit, just 4 months later, 5 months later, comes into the league and comes into the new season and is a league average defense. Like, I don't understand it. I don't get it. And tonight's the fourth quarter, Justin and Seamus. It was a prime example of it.
I was looking at this game, and I said this to myself with about 8 minutes left. The Cleveland Cavaliers had 80 points. We were up 89-80. I was looking at it, and I'm like, man, like this is kind of old school, a little low-scoring game. Like usually we see these, if the Celtics are playing, at least one of the two teams has 80 points at the half, right? And it's like, oh, man, 89. And Cavs end up scoring 115 points. Are you kidding me? They had 72 points to start that. You don't see that. We're not playing NBA 2K. We're in real life. And the Boston Celtics let the Cavaliers start with 72 points and end with 115 points. Donovan Mitchell was explosive. So again, gave him credits to start the show. Going to give him credits to end the show. But this can't happen. This can't. I don't care if it's November. I don't care. Oh, get it out of the way now. Never, ever at any point should it happen. Not even in Summer League, Rob, should a team ever put up 43 points in the fourth quarter against the defending champions. That's inexcusable.
Do you guys think it's a little bit of the hunger that this team has right now? Because you really look at defense, a lot of it connects with effort. It really does. Right. It's like, how much effort are you putting in on ball, on the perimeter, off ball, which I thought actually off ball defense for this team this year. We've actually done an all right job in helping this year. But say in transition, we've been awful this season. And some of that, maybe it's because in prior seasons we don't have that ring yet, don't have that championship yet. players, they're hanging their hat on defense a lot more. And this season, they come in and go, yeah, that's been our identity. Maybe there's really not that hunger that we saw in seasons prior. I don't want to call the team on out on that specifically, and I don't think that's
You gotta
really
wait 5 games if you do.
right. Right.
That's a threat.
I don't think that's the bulk of the problem, but do you guys
Right.
think a little bit of that exists coming off a championship? Just a little bit?
I'm not a big fan of, and Seamus, you're a big film guy, so I want to your homework assignment, because you're pretty good at this. Seamus doesn't, guys. I want to give credit on Celtics Talk Weekly to the people who who are not with us. Seamus is like this freak. Like, he's like a night owl. He will stay up till 4 a.m. editing videos for us. He'll stay up watching film. He doesn't care. He does what it takes. Watch Seamus when you're up tonight at 4 a.m. going through film for Celtics Talk Weekly content. I want you to count. We've gone through 20 games. Watch how many times the Celtics have collapsed on the defensive end and somebody has slipped back door and gotten a wide open layup, or at least even if they didn't get
how
a
many
layup,
are Jason
they've gotten a
Tatum?
look.
That's a serious
Please go through the game, Seamus, next time you go through film and tell me, and I want you to write it down and tell me how many times, because it feels as if every game there has to be at least 3 to 4 times where somebody slips back door and the defense collapses and they just kind of stand there and watch. They're doing a lot of standing and watching. And I don't know. I'm just, the Celtics defense this year seems off. I need them. I also want the Celtics coaching staff to look at a team that's right on their tail in the Orlando Magic, because these dudes every single night are holding opponents under 100 points, sometimes even under 90 points.
Well, I will say this real quick regarding your question, Seamus. I think it would be nonsense to not say that Boston has a little complacency in them. You're in game 9 or 20, coming off an NBA championship. I think this is going to get to the stretch where it might become hard for this team to find the motivation in this kind of, we're approaching the dog days. We're a month away from the dog days of the NBA season. That January to February area are the dog days.
Us. I'm like, dude, we're 16-4. Relax.
No, no, but you're approaching the dog days. So I'd like to think that for however long we do see this kind of, up and down defensive effort from Boston, because some nights it's great and some nights it's terrible. I'd like to think that when the playoffs roll around, it will be there. I am a believer, however, build good habits in the regular season, so I do want to see it. But I do tend to, I think there's a factor of complacency with the Celtics squad.
Yeah, and going back on Justin's point for a minute here too, I think they're the one, because out of all the times in which the Celtics defense collapsed, I mean, because I bet there's quite a few moments tonight. I mean, we saw quite a few moments in that game, especially in the fourth quarter. The biggest one, though, that really stands out to me, I don't even need to watch film for this one. It was 103 to 101 down the stretch, right? The Celtics, it was 101, 101. Cavaliers scored. Celtics brought the ball down, missed a shot. That was a huge possession, defensive possession, that is. And the Celtics, they needed a stop. And what happened? Backdoor cut. Boom, wide open. I believe it was Evan Mobley, if I'm not mistaken, who actually
right on the back door,
the ball there. And it became a 4-point game, but that's what really created the foul game down the stretch. And I know for Celtics fans and Cavaliers fans, they were really engaged down the stretch of the foul game going, oh no, are they going to miss one? Are we going to miss one? Oh, Peyton Pritchard, is he going to miss this intentionally? Oh, the rest of the NBA was going, come on, can this game just end already?
That's Rob. Why is Mazzulla calling timeout? This is so stupid.
I didn't say that.
Fire Mazzulla.
I was asking a question, and that was answered. My question was answered.
But that defensive possession right there, where they let Evan Mobley go backdoor and they let a pass through, and it was a wide open dunk.
Yeah,
that was the most important possession that triggered that foul game back and forth. Because if it's a 2-point game, that foul game doesn't happen. It only happens when it's a 3-4 point game. And you saw we were down 3. The Celtics were down 3 in that final minute. And it was simply, we couldn't even get a 3-point shot off because, foul. So if that possession doesn't happen in that manner and the Cavs don't get a wide open bucket, because if you saw on the other end of the floor too, Celtics, they never created a wide open bucket down the stretch, not once. I mean, really, it wasn't there at all. If that defensive possession doesn't happen, the Celtics, this game might look a little bit different in the final minute when it's going foul, and it might not even be a foul game. They might be able to actually tie it, pull it out. We never know. But that was the one possession outside of my rated possessions down the stretch that really, really mattered. And the Celtics just didn't come through defensively at all.
Right. No doubt about it. And that's what Boston needs to do. But guys, fortunately for us, the Celtics play tomorrow night. The Miami Heat at home. So obviously tonight, Porzingis and Horford both got the run. It'll be interesting to see how we use them. It is very
both
weird.
on the injury report too.
Right. So tomorrow night against Miami, this is a Miami Heat team that's kind of been struggling recently. They kind of gotten their feet kind of back under them, but they're still doing the whole Miami 500 team. Obviously, a rival. These two teams have a history. What are we expecting tomorrow night back in Boston?
Let's get the 8th seed and play Boston again for like the 10th straight year. Here's the thing. I don't know what route the Celtics go tomorrow because Porzingis and Horford past 2 years have not been playing back-to-backs. And if they have, it's usually one sits, one plays, one sits, one plays. Tonight, coming in, both on the injury report, you figure, oh, well, one of them's they're both questionable. Well, one of them's going to be available. One of them's going to be out. No, they're both available. Maybe a little bit of a testament to Derek White and Jaylen Brown being out. So they figure, well, 2 starters out. Let's try to pull 2 starters in. Going to be interesting to see how they go down that route tomorrow. Now, the Miami Heat are a bit smaller team, still a very aggressive team, undersized center with Bam Adebayo. Mentioned, go off of Seamus's point earlier. So no Xavier Tillman tonight. Will we see Xavier Tillman tomorrow night with potentially no Porzingis and or Al Horford? A little bit of that smaller center position, yet such a dominant physical presence down low who could space the floor. Interesting to see if we see Xavier Tillman. Interesting to see if we see somebody like Derek White or Jaylen Brown tomorrow. Jaylen Brown was a late scratch in the injury report. He wasn't even on the injury report to start the evening tonight. Late scratch right before the game with an illness. Will he play? So tomorrow, don't panic, everybody. Second night of a back-to-back. Injury report's going to be long. Whether it's doubtfuls, questionables, probables, availables, like it's going to be a long injury report. That's as expected. So I'm interested to see how the Celtics injury report tomorrow. And if Boston calls up the 2-way players tomorrow night again, which it's looking like they will because I feel like the injury report's going to be long no matter what on a second night of a back-to-back. Drew Peterson, baby. Go in there tomorrow night. Do your thing. Do what you did tomorrow. Do what you did tonight. Second night of a back-to-back. Peyton Pritchard, again, he lived for these games. Second nights of back-to-backs, running in the mud, low energy. Starters aren't playing. This is a Peyton Pritchard game written all over it. Calling it right now. Called the Jared McCain 40 bomb earlier in the season. Calling a Peyton Pritchard 35 bomb. You know what, Seamus? I'm going the old school route. I'm guaranteeing a 30 bomb from Peyton Pritchard tomorrow night.
Ooh, that's a pretty bold guarantee there, I will say. But I want to add another point.
As if you haven't made any.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I would guarantee things like, oh, Marcus Smart 6 assists. It's like, oh yeah, he's 7. Oh my god. But on tomorrow night, really, this game, I will say, going back on the big man conversation, I don't think we're going to see Porzingis or Horford. One of those. I shouldn't say I don't think we're going to see both of them. We're going to not see one of them tomorrow. That's my guarantee here. I think I'm going to make that prediction here.
I see you see Horford sit, and if Porzingis does play, he probably plays more in that 15 to 20 minute range.
Both bigs, both Horford and Porzingis, they were on the injury report coming into today. They were both questionable. And even Holiday, we're talking about Holiday a lot. We maybe should mention too, he was questionable coming into this game as well. Maybe he doesnthis is where back-to-backs with the NBA. It's like Derek White and Jaylen Brown, they don't play tonight, but now Drew Holiday, he's not going to play tomorrow, and Derek White and Jaylen Brown are going to play. And now Xavier Tillman didn't play tonight, and we're going to switch that around, and Horford and Porzingis aren't going to play tomorrow. But to make the point here is Porzingis, Horford, Holiday, they were all questionable coming in, and Porzingis, he played 32 minutes tonight, 32. That would be his season high so far. Now he's only played 3 games up to this point, but in those first 2 games, I believe he played 22 minutes and then he played 25 minutes. Now they increased that by 7 whole minutes tonight, and he wasn't necessarily in that 6.5 minute that stretch of when they brought him back. There was 6.5 minutes. Sit him down for about 10 minutes, 6.5 minutes, sit him down for halftime, bring him back in. And then they were kind of going on that pattern tonight. they definitely threw him out there a lot more against the Cavaliers, 32 minutes. And with Horford playing 30 minutes, with Porzingis playing 32 minutes, first night of a back-to-back, both of which were questionable coming into tonight, I don't think we're going to see at least one of those guys tomorrow night in Miami, if not both. And we'll see more of Xavier Tillman, Queta. We're going to see Cornette on the floor. I think that's what we're eventually going to see. And, of course, with the guards as well, I think we're going to see Brown and White, maybe not Holiday.
Did you guys see, real quick, Luke Cornette tonight talking his stuff? Donovan Mitchell tried to put him on a poster. Ball's still in play. Ball's going down the court, and I just see Luke Cornette look back at him as he's running down the offensive end, waving his finger. No way, Jose! You're not putting Luke Cornette on a poster.
See, I love Cornette talking smack, but here's who I don't love talking smack, or I don't love seeing
Darius
talking
Garland.
smack. Georges Niang.
Oh God,
okay, I called him out on the post game the other night, saying he's literally one of the most hated players in the NBA by other opponents. He's always starting something. Game one of the playoffs last year, Cavaliers Magic. He was the first player in the playoffs to get a fight going in the playoff run of 2024. And you even saw it tonight. There was an occasion he goes to the free throw line, hits both, and then all of a sudden he's chirping at the Celtics. And I'm going, that's why he's the most provocative player in the NBA. Georges Niang right there. Everybody hates him.
I made this comment on the Celtics Instagram. It got like a ton of traction. It was like he got dropped by Jason Tatum. I'm like, oh, minivan spinning out on the Mass Pike. Like he just like he's just so annoying. I can't stand him. He's like the 2020s Jared Dudley. Like he just stands. He's got a YMCA body. First of all, I could never do what you do, Georges Niang. Actually, I probably can. Just stand at the 3-point line with a pot belly and shoot 3-pointers. Like he literally he was on a podcast and he mentioned how much he hated Ben Simmons because Ben Simmons didn't play that season. And it's like, oh man, like Ben Simmons, like I could have fed off Ben Simmons because he's a guard who facilitates, gets to the basket. He can just kick it out to me and I can just shoot 3. It's like, dude, if you need to rely on Ben Simmons for your career, like you have a whole lot wrong going on for you, brother. Like you got to reevaluate your entire career if your career is not going well because of Ben Simmons. Like you have got to be
available at the trade deadline. Available.
Seamus, you could not. I can't believe you talked about. I can't stand him. We're wasting too much time. We gotta close this show out.
all right. Well, let me just say the Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers, they faced off tonight, obviously. And the Cleveland Cavaliers, well, guess what? They snapped the Celtics 7-game win streak as they won 115-111. Season series between the Cavs and the Celtics, the two top teams in the NBA, is tied up at 1 apiece. Guys, tomorrow night, the Boston Celtics will be back in action, back at home against the Miami Heat at 7:30 tip-off time. You can catch that one on NBC Sports Boston, guys. But however, after the final buzzer sounds, come right back here to the Celtics Talk Weekly YouTube channel and join us in for CTW Postgame Live, guys. As always, I know we're cueing the music in a sad after a loss, but you still got to cue the music. When
we're gonna get a little violin music going.
Yeah, cue the funeral music.
But guys, as always, until next time, go Seas.